and welcome to another Pit Stop podcast here at Accountex 2024, brought to you by Ask the Accountant. And we've got a very special guest because our special guest has a shiny top trump. Go on, explain to the world who you are, why you're here, why people should be interested in you.
Sure. So my name's Peter Sherrilambus. As my signage says, the Insolvency guy. Absolutely loved my time on the podcast last year. Some great footage, great outreach. Why you should have a chat with me? Most accountants think, I'll never lead you until, they need me. And it's usually kind of last minute and in a reactive kind of way. So it's more kind of educating about the murky world of insolvency. Yep. It's still got that moniker, I'm afraid, but we are kind of shining a light on the depths of it. I'm forever banging on about the importance of taking early advice, almost like having your finger on the pulse on certain clients. If you know things are going the wrong way, you can intercept it, you can take action. Whilst we're on the fringes of the accountancy world, we're kind of there to support accountants and their clients.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite analogies you ever said was, and it definitely resonated with me, was the doctor analogy.
Yeah, it was a bit off the cuff, I'll be honest. So, it
resonated though.
Well, the podcast that we did, we were already 2 drinks in before we started. I don't know how many drinks you guys have had, but I was 2 in. So by the end of the podcast, I was on number 3. And it's at that point the magic started happening. I haven't had a drink not that I'm an alkie, but it worked really well. And it just came out as the business doctor, which is, it is what it says on the tin, kind of there in every eventuality. And the earlier you get diagnosed, the more options you have.
Exactly.
And that's as simple as.
I love that. I love that analogy. Okay, so you're here at Accountex 2024. What's been your first impression so far of this year's event?
In a nutshell, it's electric. You can feel a buzz in the room. If you just stop and think, and as we're here now, you can kind of feel that buzz. And that's what I like. I mentioned to you earlier, I've been coming for, 7, 8 years. When I first starting out, walking around trying to absorb. For me, it's important to understand what's going on in the accountancy world.
Yeah.
It's important to be able to relate to the day-to-day of the accountancy, because there's bits and pieces that I then have to pick up when I'm there on the operating table, so to speak.
Bring it back to that analogy. I love it.
So my favorite bit now is just kind of walking around, bumping into so many familiar faces, having a chin wag, as well as, a bit of interaction on the stalls and that kind of stuff. But as with everything, it's the people that make the event, and people here are great.
I love it. So speaking of people, speaking of coming to an event like this, you are going to be bombarded with information left, right and centre, aren't you? This is going to be a place where you're like a sponge, you're going to be absorbing all of these amazing new bits of either tech from different vendors, or it's going to be a new takeaway you'll get from one of the talks. Mm-hmm. How do you go from an event like this and actually make it actionable? We could all come to these sort of events and just meander around, but how do we make sure we take action from it?
Sure. So I think it's about planning your day.
Yeah.
So I was gutted I couldn't make Accountex in Manchester. Something popped up and I missed Fab. Something popped up again today. I was like, I'm sorry, guys, I'm coming down.
Accountex.
Someone else can firefight for today. So I kind of semi-planned some bits of the day. I downloaded the app quite early on.
Nice.
I picked 3 or 4 of the talks that I thought are must-go-tos. And then a few people that I know are coming down that I need to catch up with. I've then scheduled them in.
Yeah.
So a third of my day is the talks that I want to go and see. A third of it I'm using as a catch-up for a coffee. And whatnot, and then a third of it is playtime. It's free time. It's me, enjoying the buzz.
Yeah, I love it. So that's what you take away from, or that's how you make sure you take away from this event. The industry as a whole, your industry is even more fascinating than the typical kind of accountants industry. But if you look at it as a whole, or just your particular sector, what do you love most about the industry at this point in time?
The fast changes, the pace of the changes.
Yeah.
That if you don't keep up with it, you're gonna get left behind. That was not a thing kind of 20, 30 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. Especially in our neck of the woods.
Yeah.
But the different generations seem to be sticking together, and I think the disparity between them is to do with tech, is to do with the social media presence, is to do with the branding, and you kind of find your home. I think 2 out the 3 or 4 that I've got lined up, predominantly around the branding. That's something that I've inadvertently stumbled across and then subsequently worked on more and more. So that's something quite big in the accounting industry, and there's many examples of that here exhibiting today. It's a journey that I've been on, and I think it's just really important in the accounting industry, in the professional services industry, because I think there's an awareness of kind of big brands and how they operate. And actually, you want to keep yourself available. You want to show why you're different. And the reason why you're different is because you're human and you need to be approachable.
I love it. And I think you've really demonstrated that power of that personal brand, right? Like, you've built up your following and everything else. And it's you being you, right? That's
Absolutely
what it boils down to.
Absolutely. When I was first kind of making my way around the insolvency world, it just so happened that a lot of the insolvency practitioners were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they were working with accountants in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I was like, I can't figure out how I'm going to break into this. And actually, I'm not of that mold. I'm of a completely different mold, and I found my way through social media.
I love it. Okay, so that's what you love. That's what gives you the fire in your belly.
Yep.
What do you not like so much about the industry at the moment? What keeps you awake at night?
Regulation. So accountants are regulated, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Insolvency.
Whole different world, isn't it?
Insolvency is regulated to the nth degree. I think that a lot of the regulation is very reactive. It's to do with bad press. It's to do with the high profile insolvencies, and it's politicians need to be seen to be doing something. And so it's kind of like changes that I don't think are well thought through. I just came back from the R3 conference. It's the insolvency version of, we don't do, without ripping too much of my impression, we don't do many things that are exciting. There's just not many of us. But we were up in St Andrews in Scotland.
Oh, wow.
And on a 3-day conference. And the thing that resonated most with me was from all the 4 UK nations, we had the insolvency service tell us what's happening with regulation. And it was actually, we want to modernise this, but the state of Parliament in Northern Ireland means that they're stuck on the 1986 Insolvency Act and rules. So they still have to have physical meetings, whilst us in England and Wales are able to do things remotely with virtual meetings and, put paperwork on websites for people to access, whilst in Northern Ireland, they've still got to be sent. And so all the different jurisdictions were basically saying, we want to modernize what we do and how we govern the profession, but we're stuck with not being able to push things through with Parliament. I'd say AML is incredibly tricky in our line of work. I came across a company that had Russian assets, Russian rubles in the bank. It wasn't entirely clear whether we'd be able to act, whether we needed court sanction, we needed sanctions from the OFSI to deal with anything in Russia. All of a sudden, you're like, what should be a relatively straightforward job is an absolute minefield. I'm going to spend 20 grand in legals before even contemplating being able to know whether I can or might not be able to do this job. So, if I could change something, if I could modernize something, what keeps me up or awake at night is the insolvency regulation. The AML side of it isn't particularly clear. I find that in the accountancy world as well. It's all very reactive. I don't think there's enough of speaking to the profession as to what we're experiencing on a day-to-day, what we're actually doing. It's all kind of a one-way procession, kind of being dictated down to.
That we're told to do X, Y, Z.
I find that quite upsetting.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's look back 12 months from now. So 12 months ago. So within that time, so since the last account X to now, talk to me about your tech stack. Talk to me about something. It doesn't have to be accountancy related. It doesn't have to be, piece of software or anything just for accountants. But is there anything in those last 12 months that has been a game changer for you that you've gone to yourself, you know what? I wish I knew about this sooner. Or this has come along and it's completely changed the game for me.
I'm assuming we're allowed to
name drop. Yeah.
So I think Verify with their biometric search has been great. Because everything that I do is high risk. So it's always enhanced due diligence. I need the verified ID with the link and directly go people able to do it on their phones.
Yeah.
It means that I'm able to expedite the issuing of my engagement letter. Before, there was a little bit of a dilly-dally period. We resolved to having WhatsApp video calls, taking screenshots of people's IDs just to get things moving.
Yeah.
So that's really helped. The other one for me is Analytics. We weren't using it the correct way at the beginning. It took a bit of time to embed it in our systems and processes. The reason why it's so important for us is we have to do some basic reviews of the company books and records, and we have to report to the insolvency service within 3 months. Often when a company's in financial difficulty, it's the bookkeeping that goes out the window in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
So you can't rely on your traditional sources. I need the bank statements, and without them, I can't meet my reporting deadline at 3 months. So we now get that feed tied up as part of the onboarding process.
Yeah.
And it means that we're not scrambling around a couple of days before that 3-month deadline, our statutory reporting deadline. So it's not just the tech, but actually how you incorporate it into your systems and processes. So when we first discovered it, it sounded great.
Yeah.
Actually, we were misusing it or not using it in the right way.
Yeah.
Once it becomes ingrained in your processes, then you see the fruits of your labor.
And the benefits of that easy to see, right? Okay, so that was 12 months backwards. What about if we look forward 12 months? How do you feel like AI is going to impact your profession? So as accountants, we are excited about the fact that we can have ways to make our workflows be more efficient. And we've got opportunities to really help our clients and wow our clients. You've already said that you're quite slow to react.
Yep.
Do you think like AI is going to have an opportunity? Or are you going to be more of a, we're going to have to wait and see on this one?
So with the reactive kind of approach,
yeah,
I think that's up to us as individuals, as individual insolvency practitioners, to kind of break free of that mold. So we are looking at various ways of automating some of our very administrative tasks. One could say that insolvency at its very basic level is some form filling and some filing, and that's pretty much it. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but there's a hell of a lot of automation. And one of the things that we're speaking about as a profession at the last conference was actually that we're not really getting the graduates through. We don't know where the next generation of insolvency practitioners are going to come from. There's 2 reasons for that. One is that because of the red tape, a lot of the junior staff are doing, very basic data entry type roles.
Yeah.
And actually automating that as much as possible will then free up to do more exciting work. Hopefully that will then G up more people into the profession. Another problem that we identified was actually, again, back to the regulation point, that maybe 10, 15 years ago when I first started, if you were doing a trading administration, the junior members, I was going with a year or 2 under my belt, trading businesses. In the deep end, on the coalface. That doesn't happen so much because we're so heavily regulated now that I tend to be on the trading floor.
Yeah.
It's not something you can run from the desk anymore. And the flip side of that is that, the juniors in the profession aren't getting that level of exposure. So I'm really keen to explore the automation. I mean, one thing that's really changed things is a program called Prism 339.
Okay.
It was built by an insolvency practitioner working with a bunch of developers. So again, at that 3-month mark that I mentioned, we have to do a basic analysis of the books and records to see if there's anything untoward that's gone on. This program analyzes 3 years worth of bank statements.
Interesting.
And flags up stuff that we would ordinarily have to report on under the Insolvency Act.
Yep.
Absolute game changer. So before, it meant literally manually going through both the bank statements and then the physical books and records to make sure that this purchase and the corresponding invoice are business related. For example, it automatically identifies outliers. So round sums, repeat patterns of payments to, let's say there was an intercompany loan, and you can't pay your dad his loan back before paying HMRC. It's a preference.
Yeah.
The software actually identifies various patterns.
Brilliant.
And flags up, have a look at this, have a look at this, have a look at this. So it's very intelligent in the way that it's able to identify the patterns and then present it in a way that is readily usable for us in our day job in terms of our reporting.
I love
So, we're working on it in terms of dynamism that I'd like to think, especially for our practice, I'm kind of really keen to explore any avenue that we can to get rid of the mind-numbing bits of our role.
Yeah.
So that, it can be an exciting profession again.
exciting profession. And also you learn so much more from the candidates because they are doing stuff other than just the minimum work, right?
Yeah.
Like you start to actually test them at an earlier stage. You can see the bright sparks coming through because you're actually giving them meaty work that actually they can give some impact.
And the bit that I'm enjoying most. So I mentioned at the beginning about the different generations.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying learning from the younger generation.
Yeah,
We've got a graduate that's just started. He's got a master's in statistics. Absolutely loves AI.
Yeah.
And he's always looking at as he's learning the job role, he's always looking at how he can save time.
Yeah.
And he's teaching me things that I just didn't know existed.
Amazing.
Which is absolutely fantastic.
And for you, that's something you can take to the rest of the profession and then build it from there. I love it.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, it's been an amazing podcast with you.
Thank you very much.
We have that camera. Your opportunity now to spread the word. Like, where can people find you? Why should they be looking for you? What sort of content can you give them? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So you'll find me on Instagram at in.solvency. I'm also on TikTok since we last did a podcast. I'm finding Huawei. I'm absolutely loving that. So it's P to the IP on TikTok. You'll see me floating around on LinkedIn as well. Feel free, reach out, have a chat. And actually, since we did the last podcast, there was a bit of a spike in the Instagram following.
Nice.
And actually, I was able to help a couple of accountants who directly reached out off the back of that.
Brilliant.
So thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you for looking after him. That's what it's all about, right? We're a community.
Thank you.
So that has been Peter. This has been our Pit Stop podcast for Accountants 2024. Peter, you have thoroughly deserved your shiny card status.
Thank you very much.
We can't wait to have you on again. Surely we'll be able to get you on at some point just to give us an update on how it's all going.
I'd love to.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
And if you want any more content like this one, you're already in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Don't forget to follow Peter for all of your insolvency needs. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.